Massimo, can you hear us?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining the meeting. I take also the opportunity to introduce you with the other speaker. Massimo Torero is the Chief Economist at the FAO. Here we have also Mario Cerutti. Mario is the Chief Institutional Relation and Sustainability Officer of Lavazza. And we also have Andrea Saba, who is on behalf of Maria Grazia Alabrese. Unfortunately, Maria Grazia could not join us for last minute commitment. But Andrea Saba is a postdoctoral researcher in agriculture, food, and environmental law at the Institute of Law, Politics and Development of the University Sant'Anna of Pisa. So just to introduce each other. And I also see that the numbers of participants is growing. So maybe just 1 minute, and then we can kick off the first global webinar on agri-food sector of ICC as part of the ICC Agrifood project. I invite all to open the camera, so it will be more easy to identify each other. And you know, the online modality is already tough in terms of personal relations. So at least if we have and keep the camera on, we give a voice instead of only a voice, also a familiar face to our webinar. Okay. So since we don't want to run out of the time, I'm sure other participants will join. We have received more than 60 registration for all the global network of ICC. First of all, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mercola De Vito. I'm the ICC Agrifood lead for UN Rome-based agency, and many of you, we are now running this project, which is called ICC Agrifood Hubs, a new global initiative focusing on agri-food sector, together with my colleagues Sebastian Ferrari, that you can see in the picture. We are co-leading this project since 2 years ago now, so it has been quite new but very intensive activities on this project. Sebastian is also the Secretary General of ICC Argentina. The National Committee of Argentina is leading the activities and services of this project for the Latin part. It's of course with this team, and I also see Facundo Pivetti connected with him from Buenos Aires. With me there is Paolo Liberatore, who is coordinating the activities with me. This is the ICC team, but it's a great opportunity today to be together, because this is the first global webinar that we have been organizing within the project ICC Agrifood Hubs. As was mentioning, ICC Agrifood Hubs is a new initiative. We decided to launch these activities last year in 2022. ICC, as many of you already know, and I see already many colleagues from other committees here connected, is a World Business Organization based in Paris, but we have more than 150 committees all around the globe. We represent more than 45 million companies at the global level, so it's a huge and the biggest network of companies representing all the main sector connected to the international commerce. 2 years ago, based also on the role of ICC as a UN Special Observer gathered in 2016, we decided to connect our network and to focus our network also on the agribusiness activity, since it's a very crucial, important sector. And 2 years ago, we decided to launch this ICC Agrifood Hubs. It's a global initiative. The mission of ICC Agrifood Hubs is to create an ICC ecosystem of main stakeholders of agribusiness sector, so companies, professional, institution, and of course public sector and academia, try to facilitate a dialogue between the main actors of the sector, and also an efficient cooperation between all the main stakeholders. So the project is running in a very intensive and fast modality. In Italy, we have launched this project in March 2022. We already have more than 50 companies involved and different partners, law firms and different consulting firms are jumping in the project. We launched the project also in Argentina in March. I was in Buenos Aires with Sebastian Facund and the team. And we are also planning to launch the activities in Iran next year. And we are now connecting all the colleagues from other national committees with this initiative. So it's very important and a great initiative, and I'm really happy to see that there is a lot of interest. Today, we have the great opportunity to discuss together with our partners, I can say, and also companies part of the project about the role of public-private partnership in advancing cooperation and efficient project for make the agriculture and food system more sustainable. This is something very crucial for us. We truly believe that the role of ICC in advancing this effective cooperation between private sector and public sector is becoming more and more important. And this is also confirmed by the attention and by the consideration that we have been receiving and the support we are offering to UN Rome-based agency here in Rome. And so today I go to introduce also the speakers that will be with us for the next hour. And I'm really grateful and thanks to Mr. Massimo Torero. Massimo is the chief economist of FAO, that you know is the Food Agriculture Organization. We don't need to present FAO, but we have the privilege in Rome to have this close, also in terms of logistic distance, with the main agriculture organization at the global level. Massimo, there is no expert more appropriate than him to talk about and discuss about topics like food poverty, inequality. He has been joining FAO in January 2019 and also previously was working at the World Bank, so group like executive director of several countries in Latin America. So I'm really happy and grateful to Massimo to have found the time to be with us. Also because we signed a very fruitful and hopefully prospectful agreement between FAO and ICC in March 2002. The activities that we are running with FAO are mainly concentrated on a very efficient engagement of private sector and especially of ICC business community in FAO activities in order to identify new perspectives of the cooperation and also area where private sector could be involved. And during this webinar, we will also discuss about a new initiative of the FAO, which is called Hand in Hand Initiative, and Massimo will be also give an overview of better explaining what is Hand in Hand Initiative, what is the role, could be the role of the private sector and any opportunities that can come from this event that will be taking place in October. So I pass then to Mario Cerruti. Mario, thank you very much for joining us. Also, Mario is very relevant and prestigious expert of sustainability affairs on food sector. Mario is the Chief Institutional Relations Sustainability Officer of Lavazza. I don't need to introduce Lavazza, but if you think about coffee, there is only one name that comes to our mind, especially in Italy, I can say, but I'm sure also in the other part of the world. So the role of Mario has been instrumental in placing sustainability and corporate social responsibility at the forefront of Lavazza business. So Mario has a huge experience, and we really are thankful to Lavazza and Mario Cerruti because now they are getting engaged in this ICC Agrifood project as member of ICC Italy. And of course, you know, the experience and the voice of private sector is very important for us in order to identify how we can shape proficient and efficient cooperation between private sector. So thank you, Mario. And also with Mario, we will go through the voice of Lavazza and also experience of Lavazza for the cooperation with the public sector. Then I jump to the academia side. You know, the event of today is representing exactly also how the dialogue could be shaped, different stakeholders, different perspectives, same issues sometimes, but it's also important to have a different vision of all the actors, and the today events is the, let's say, the proof that this dialogue is possible. This dialogue should be always more and more advanced. So today with us from the academia side, we have Andrea Saba. Thank you, Andrea, for joining. Andrea is replacing Maria Grazia Labrese, the Professor Maria Grazia Labrese, who is leading a project for Sant'Anna School of Advanced Studies in Pisa. Maria Grazia Labrese is leading this project and also the group which is called AG Law, Agri-Food and Environmental Law Research Team. This is a very important team. We have been signing also with the Sant'Anna di Pisa an agreement recently, a few months ago. So Sant'Anna di Pisa will be supporting us as academia and research partner of this project. And today with Andrea Saba, Andrea is a postdoctoral researcher in agriculture, food and environmental law. Andrea has a huge expertise on the rule and policy involved in promoting sustainability and digital transition of farming and food system. So this is the parterre of the speakers, and we will run a very interactive session. We have 2 questions that we will pose to our speaker, but I really invite all of you and participants involved to interrupt us during the Q&A session and just to use the chat if in case you would like to jump in the conversation. We don't want to have only the one side speech, but we would really like to take this conversation open and interactive. Of course, I would like to thank all the colleagues and friends from ICC Global Network who have supported us in promoting this webinar, and I see that are always more and more involved in this project. So I stop here because I don't really want to annoy you with all the presentation part, but I'm really honored and glad to give the floor to Massimo Torrero, posing him the first question of the webinar, because what is very important also for us is try to understand what are the most pressing challenges facing by the global food system in terms of sustainability, and also how can public and private sector cooperate to address these challenges. Of course, the view of FAO for us is very important in order to also understand how the role of organizations like ICC can be supportive and a strong partner for delivering new and efficient results. So Massimo, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I have 5 minutes, no? 5 to 6 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, so let me briefly put the photograph of where we are and what is the challenge that we have. So the current photograph that we have today is, if we look at chronic undernourishment, we are around 820 million people chronically undernourished. If we look at acute food insecurity, which is the concept of short term, what we use in emergency, we are in 255 million people in acute food insecurity, meaning IPC 3 or above. So if they are in IPC 5, people are dying. No? IPC 3 is at high risk, and then you can evolve onwards. At the same time, agriculture emits around 28% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world. We have poverty numbers which are increasing, extreme poverty, increased significantly because of COVID-19. And then there was supposed to be a return and an improvement, but the improvement was completely slowed down because of the war in Ukraine. And we have around 3.1, 3.2 billion people that don't have access to healthy diets. That's the diversity of diets. So we have a world where we have an agricultural system that is operating in an environment which is deteriorating. The nature is deteriorating. It's being affected by climate, which brings 4 impacts. One is extreme temperatures. The second one is water, excess or lack of water. The third one is climate variability. And the fourth one is evolution of pests and diseases based on climate. A system that also is affected by water stress, and a system that has been affected by macro policies, especially exchange rate issues, devaluation, significant indebtedness of the most vulnerable countries, and by the competition between energy and food, which has happened before in the 2008-2007 food crisis with biofuels, and now with natural gas and nitrogen a key input in fertilizers, NPK, nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. But also is affected by emergency situations, which creates migration and creates problems in the labor force and accelerate crisis at country level. So that's the photograph. The photograph is not so good, but what are the good news? The good news is that that system is stabilizing in the sense that prices are coming back, although still very high. They are improving in the last 12 or 11 months. Chronic undernourishment is also stabilizing. We hope that acute food insecurity will start to decline, but again, that's driven by mostly conflicts and slowdowns and downturns. But we see a lot of inputs in trying to transform this agri-food system to try to accelerate and to try to make a change on how this could improve in the future. And what it means that we have to have a system that has to deliver more with less. We have to have a system that has to achieve SDG 2 by 2030 or 2050, but at the same time have to commit to the 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that emissions, that 28%, offers a huge potential of reduction, especially because for agriculture, climate change is negative. But agriculture is not the only responsible of climate change. It contributes to it. But for a country and for any sector to be able to achieve SDG 2, they need to figure out how much investment they need to do to change that pathway so that they can achieve the SDG 2 by 2030, but at the same time reduce emissions so that they can reduce the 28%. And that is not easy, and that's where a huge investment gap is happening today. So what we are facing today is a world where agricultural investment is going down at the country level. Even in Africa, the Malabo Declaration, 10% of expenditure in agriculture never was complied by very few countries. So we're talking of around 2 to 3 or 4% in average of investment in agriculture. So the public sector by itself needs to change this, needs to start investing more in this sector, but also the private sector has to play a crucial role to be able to close this investment gap. But of course, the private sector role is also to make money and to make profits and to do business in the agricultural sector. So the job is how we can create those opportunities, which in the extreme could be opportunities that are supported by public resources. In the middle, it could be opportunities that are de-risked initially, so the private sector can enter areas where they have the technology to do the change. And in the other extreme is completely private investment. So what the private sector cannot do, then the government has to cover, and other agencies have to support that process. Now, the current financial institution structure of the world is pretty weak at this point. Why? Because more or less 60 countries are very close to debt stress. Ghana was a surprise. Nobody expected Ghana to go into debt stress. But there are many other countries in the world that are in that pipeline to go to debt stress. The banks and the IFIs have spent significant amount of their capital in recovery of COVID-19, and the interest rates are going up. So in that context, we have to change this structure of financing, and we have to work in such a way that we bring together the public, the private sector, and international financing mechanism. But the issue is how we can make this priority and how we can really target properly the top types of interventions that we can do to achieve that. Now, the way we look at this is what we call is building resilience. And we have divided resilience in two big components. And where we talk about resilience, for us is meaning more productivity, more capacity of countries to respond, more capacity of countries to absorb. But there are two important components that we need to look at. One is the component of how we can prevent the risk to happen. That's the early warning system. And the second component is how we can increase the coping with the risk when it happens, because the risk will happen. This agri-food system that I have been describing will have risk and uncertainties because of climate, because of water stress, because of conflict, because of war. It will be choked. We need to understand that the system won't be static. It will be based on probability distributions of what could happen and in which state of the nature I will be, and then I have to assess what to do. So I have to be ready to work in that logic. So the second component of coping with the risk is where I think there is huge potential for private sector, but also in the first component. Why? Because to be able to minimize risk or to be preventive, we need to have early warning systems in place, and that's where we are working. So we're trying to design as public good 12 early warning systems that will alert countries and farmers what could be happening, where the early part is really important. Second, the One Health approach, so how we can bring and avoid issues and emergence of new zoonotic diseases, especially with climate that will create and increase the probability. And the third, and where the private sector can play a role, is insurance. And this is a different type of insurance. We normally talk of agricultural insurance, which is complex. And there has been very low pickup rate, especially in poor countries, to index weather insurance. But we're talking of catastrophic insurance that will cover several dimensions of risks, including conflict, including droughts, flooding, and even earthquake insurance, that combined will reduce the covariance and allow us to accelerate the process. Now, part of that insurance will have to be subsidized. Part of that insurance will be commercial. And the question is how we can make the mix and what is the optimal mix to achieve that, and how we can get a better probability of the loss that could happen to reduce the cost of the reinsurance companies. In the coping with the risk, I think there you have a huge role as private sector, because the first element is to increase absorptive capacity. And that means having many trade partners, having diversification of production, and manage properly your emergency stocks. You need to have social protection, of course, but well-targeted social protection, and the private sector doesn't necessarily play a role there. But you need to prioritize investments and interventions that will optimize the capacity of production. Because we know that if we increase productivity, we can move a lot of people out of poverty, and at the same time assure that we have more supplies of production. But that production has to be sustainable. So in the part of investments, I think this mixture of private, public, and IFIs could play a crucial role, and we need to find the correct mixture that will lower the risk, but also will assure that it's sustainable over time. One topic that is essential is reduction of losses and waste. And in all the way we produce, we can reduce losses, which today are 13.2%, and waste is 17%. And waste can easily be reduced. And there we have a triple win. We have more availability of commodities, we have better use of our natural resources, and reduce emissions. The bigger share of the emissions are by burning food that is not being consumed. And our job as the international organizations is to find ways in which the support that happens today to agriculture is repurposed in a way that it will create the incentives to what we want to achieve, and not just to create distortions, which normally today, most of it creates distortions. And clearly, trade has to play a role today. There is no way that we can operate without trade. So we have to find options of investment. We have to identify where there is an opportunity and target those opportunities within countries, and I will explain that later. But that's where I see the challenges today and where we should be moving. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maximo, and for this very precise overview, and for the many points of discussion that you raised. I'm sure that now the discussion will be a lot of interest also from Lavazza side. So I give the floor to Mario Cerruti, asking him. Maximo was talking about the system, the opportunities, and how we can shape the future of the path between private and public sector. So the question for you is a bit of the view of Lavazza in terms of cooperation between private and public sector.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Ercole, and good afternoon, everybody, and for the friends that have a different time frame, good evening, and all good morning. So, as thank you for the presentation. I work for Lavazza and responsible for the among other things for the Lavazza Foundation. Lavazza Foundation is the instrument we founded 20 years ago. In order to carry on activities and projects, sustainability projects into producing coffee-producing countries. Our company is only working on coffee, so coffee is always our daily thought. Now, in this specific aspect of the private and public relationship is actually quite a widespread issue. There is a lot of discussion going on, and sometimes there are critics, sometimes there are more, let's say, positive opinion or positive ways to solve the equation. Of course, I can only tell you our experience and not necessarily implying that our experience is the good one in terms of this relationship. But let's try to quickly see from the point of view of a foundation, which is basically a body that is get some funds in order to do sustainability activities, mainly in the agricultural area of coffee production. What is the relationship that we can have with the public sector? There are actually quite a wide types of relationship, and so just to have a quick look, we can work with the public sector, for example, for financing or most commonly co-financing the specific needs for a project. We can work with the private sector for putting together a group of financing institutions. This is, for example, a very important role in that I personally have seen it in many cases where the public can actually be very active by using their own funds in order to mobilize and create a kind of a group. So maybe whatever the bank, the World Bank or one of the development companies like the Swiss one or the French or the Italian even or SIDA, which is the Swedish one, can be the actor to put the money for a specific activity, but also to put together other financing that can come from private and or other public. So this is, for example, a role that I've seen it working very, very well in many cases. Other specific role are the one of developing specific activities where there are well-known competencies, which is exactly the opposite of what I've seen many times, that the public sector sometimes really want to do everything, and so that is where maybe the results are not so optimal now. But when the public sector concentrate on doing what are certain specific characteristics that they can well manage, the solution is actually quite well. And then probably another way of doing things, which is actually a relatively, for us, is a relatively new development, is really working as an interface between private and other public institutions. Let me give you an example, because this is one of the, it's a very recent development we have seen. You probably have heard about the deforestation legislation, which has been approved by you and will actually be enter into force in about 18 or 20 months, something like that. Now, from the point of view of the business, this legislation has some problems to be applied, some weakness, and something that can be corrected, and something that will not be connected. Now the question is that if I go to talk to the commission, to the EU, of course I'm defending the interest of a company. Of course we are the bad ones, and so on and so forth. So in a way, it's a discussion, it's a dialogue that really start not necessarily from the best starting point. And so we for example in this case had made some activity together with other public institutions. In this particular case, I'm referring to the International Trade Center, I'm referring to the International Coffee Organization, and so on and so forth, and maybe other public organizations in coffee producing countries like Uganda Coffee Board and many others. So some private and all of these public institutions, we got together to show the EU Commission that certain issues are easy, certain issues are much more difficult to solve, that there are some weak points and some other strength in the legislation. So it works like a kind of a mediation, you know, in order to present to another, in principle, another public institution a picture that shouldn't be less biased, exactly because the private sector is obviously defending its own point of view, but the public sector, in principle, should have a much more neutral point of view, which is absolutely fine. So maybe for now, Ercole, that is more or less the situation to just basically settle a little bit some of the cases, and if you wish, of course, we can maybe later when you want to come back to some other examples.
Thank you very much, Mario. Very interesting points of discussion, and I'm sure that for the Q&A session we will also have opportunity to open a dialogue on this, because different points require also different view for other part of the table. But now I pass the floor to Andrea Saba. Andrea, on you, the view of the academia, because the perspectives on these topics are very let's say close in a way, but sometimes are also need to be linked, and we need to link the dots of the discussion. So I really would appreciate your overview for academia side of the importance of PPP in agricultural value chain.
Thank you, Ercole. Well, the academia has historically have the goals of producing knowledge, and nowadays this knowledge need to be applied. So it is a challenge-based research that we are carrying out so far. And if you have a look to the European, but also international document, public and private partnership need to involve public institution, society, of course, and private sector. And the academia could provide the expertise and the knowledge and also the technical assistance in putting together all the actors in and to address the challenge in sustainability of farming and food system. Because when we talk about sustainability, we have to consider the three dimensions of sustainability. So environmental sustainability, that means both protection and also valorization of our environment, social sustainability, which is quite crucial at involve the inclusive development and empowerment of, in particular, smallholder and small-scale farmers, and of course, the economic sustainability. So far, we have three main types of public and private partnership that have emerged in the international arena. One is the partnership that aim to develop, of course, agricultural value chains, but at the same time, we have partnership for joint research and innovation. Because when we consider the sustainable transition of agricultural and food system, we have also to develop new instruments that allow us to address the challenge. And if we have a look to the recent communication of the European Commission, we have like a twin transition. Both sustainability and need to be enhanced by the digital transition of agricultural and food system. And the European Commission called that the twin transition. So both sustainable and digital transition. And the digital technology provide the means, the instrument to allow a smooth, let's say, or to boost the transition of agriculture and food system. And but this is for sure requiring high level investment and a perceived or actual high risk of adopting new practice and sustainable instruments that often require, let's say, the involvement of the public to leverage the risk, even if more and more the private sector recognizes as interested the sustainability as a competitive advantage in that sense. And we have like quite good best practice in Europe with a new instrument that is recognized under the new Common Agricultural Policy, which is called the Agricultural Knowledge and Information System, that involve and require the participation of academia, private sector, and the public institution itself, with the flow of information and the flow of knowledge in adopting and the new instrument, new technology, and new practice for the sustainability of agricultural food system. And this is founded by the new instrument under the CAP, so the Common Agricultural Policy. So this is, I think, the role of academia in providing knowledge and adopting through not only like perhaps in the past, a top-down approach, but a very bottom-up approach in doing research that we can call action research, because the research is focused on addressing and solving real problems in the field. I try to be like short just to give more space for the debate at hand.
Thank you, Andrea. A very interesting overview also on the perspectives of the PPP in terms of different modalities of partnership between private and public sector. Also, I would like to participant to to write questions in case there is any curiosity and comments using the chat. We will have the last 10 minutes for open a bit the discussion on these topics. But before to move on Q&A, I would like also to now go straight on case and projects for UN part and also from private sector and academia, that we can bring the attention of the audience also to better understand concretely what are the most crucial and at the same time opportunity of collaboration that the private sector has already put on the plate for cooperation with for example with FAO. I start from Massimo on this. For example, I know that FAO is last year has been working a lot of shaping new strategy for cooperation with the private sector, especially I'm referring to the Hand-in-Hand Initiative project under the World Food Forum, which is organized annually by the FAO. Hand-in-Hand Initiative is this new initiative has been launched last year, and I see as ICC and also for the ICC Business Network great opportunity of involvement also for cooperation. So in terms of cooperation and more details of this project, I leave the floor to Massimo to better explain how the FAO initiative could promote this cooperation between public and private sector, and at the same time opportunity and challenges that are being dealing with. Thank you, Massimo. Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much. And let me explain a little bit how we are operating here. So as you know, private sector operating with UN agencies, with FAO, has been very complex because of all the restrictions and all the bureaucracy that we have to comply with to be able to attract private sector to operate. But consistent with what I was saying before, our interest is to attract private sector investments, not to necessarily go through FAO, but to work directly with the countries. So 4 years ago, we started the initiative Hand in Hand. Today, this initiative is in 63 countries in the world. If you look in the webpage Hand in Hand Initiative FAO, it will pop up. And the initiative, in what it consists. And let me briefly explain the sequence of how this works. Basically, a country requests FAO to be part of the Hand in Hand initiative. Initially, was targeted to the poorest countries. Now it's open to every country in the world. Just to give you an idea, we have countries like Chile, where we work together with them, We are starting negotiations with Brazil, but we are in Colombia, we are in Peru, we are in almost all Africa operating, and we are in La OPDR in Asia. We will start also operations in other countries in Asia. We are very strong in Bangladesh, for example. So once the country tells FAO that they want to operate, FAO immediately develops a task force. And the task force is to try to work with the government to identify areas where there is significant potential to agriculture. So essentially, and I will show you briefly, what we do is we estimate this type of maps that you are seeing. This is the case of Bolivia, where we first look at what is the potential value for agriculture, and we refer to agriculture. It could be livestock, crops, high-value commodities, forestry. For FAO, agriculture involves all those, the different activities. Now, we estimate the potential, so how much that specific activity in that country, in their territory, could make in terms of money. So we convert this to a profit function, to money. And the frontier has to achieve at least $7 per capita per day to be able to be a target area for this initiative. Then we look, so in this color for Bolivia, the darker the color, the higher the potential. Then we look at the efficiency. So where the farmers are today in terms of their efficiency. So they are supposed to be able to produce $7 per capita per day, but they are producing 1.5, for example. That means that their inefficiency is high. So when you look at the efficiency value, you will see that the darker, the higher the efficiency, the lighter the color, the lower the efficiency. So the first thing to learn is you have high potential, the purple, very low efficiency. Means that these farmers can get into $7 per capita per day. Then we look at the accessibility and what is the market accessibility in terms of access to roads, and we have a raster model. And finally, we prioritize based on poverty. So when we combine this, which is a very high resolution, we get into a typology like this one. And the areas that hand in hand will target are the dark green areas. Are areas that has very high potential, low or medium efficiency, meaning that I can put these farmers from $1 to $7 per capita per day, but also areas with a lot of poverty, because our job is to move out people out of poverty. Now, the question now is, okay, what happens in those green areas and why these farmers are not being efficient? And what we do is then we send technical teams to assess what are the challenges on specific commodities and crops in those green areas. Based on that, we identify the problems. And then we send the investment center of FAO, which is very famous. It works with the World Bank and many international banks. And we develop investment plans. And that is where work with the private sector starts. Once we have the investment plans, we clearly can estimate what are the returns in terms of economic returns of these investment plans, because we know how many people we will be making achieve this $7 per capita per day. We estimate the social benefits. We estimate the environmental cost. We have a tool called Exact that captures and measures whatever investment, what will be the level of emissions and effects over biodiversity. And we provide the details of the investment, like if it is an irrigation project, for example, we will provide details of the needs. What is the area to be covered? What is the average cost in the area? What is the amount of water, depending on the commodities that you have. That investment plan is brought to FAO to a World Food Forum, which is October 16. This year will be October 16. So all the ministers will come from those countries, the government, and they will present their investment plan like a typical roadshow. And the investment plans will be quantified and so on. And during that period of time, in the last 3 months or 4 before the investment forum, there is an app where companies and IFIs and banks can request bilateral appointments with the governments. So you come to Rome, every country will have an office, and you do bilateral meetings. We don't expect the investment to happen in that point, but we expect that this facilitates the communication and gives opportunity to companies of where they could invest in these countries, especially because we have normally we invest between 500 to $1 million to a little bit more money to calculate and develop these investment plans in the countries, so that you can reduce the asymmetry of information, of what is there, where are the opportunities. And then, of course, you as private sector can make any deal that you want with the government. We just facilitate and create a platform. In addition, we also attract major IFIs. So this year we have the World Bank coming, the IFC coming from the World Bank, the IDB Corporation. We have the IDB Lab we have CABEI for Central America, we have the European Bank of Reconstruction, we have the AIIB, the New Development Bank, the BRICS Bank, the ADB, the African Development Bank. So we attract as much IFIs as we can so that they can also operate in the same environment and see when there is, for example, need of co-investment, how this can bring together private and public intervention and so on. And we also are bringing, for the first time this year, the foundations. So we will have Rockefeller Foundation, IKEA Foundation, Gates Foundation, and 2 other foundations coming to this 1 week of interaction that we create. Now, this has a spill that countries are doing also their own investment forums in their countries and also regional forums. We have 2 regional initiatives, one for the Sahel and one for the dry corridor in Central America, where we do exactly the same, but we look at cross-country investments. So you have the investment at the country level, and then you have the cross-countries investment for those sub-regions so that we can attract. And we also have one initiative in Panama, which is the Panama Food Hub, where we have designed, together with the government of Panama, a potential food security hub for the world that could facilitate not only mobility of food, but also could facilitate value chain aggregation in Panama so that you can send intermediate products to Panama, do the final processing in Panama, and then ship based on the demand because that will facilitate mobility of commodities. So this year, the investment forum will be also with several presidents coming, like Lula is coming and 7 other presidents, plus all the ministers. We are inviting this year of the 63 countries, 30 countries will be coming with their investment plans, disaggregated by region. And we expect that it will attract significant investment. Last year, we have around $3 billion of requests. We cover close to 1-point-something billion. We hope this year we will duplicate that amount and attract more investment. So it's basically a platform that facilitates this matchmaking with private sector IFIs and companies. So let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maximo. I found ICC is enthusiastic and also glad to support the hand-in-hand initiative since it's a great opportunity for private sector, but also a great opportunity to shape new methodology of working together between the different actors of the agricultural value chain. So I really encourage companies and private sector, the one are participating to this webinar, but also we are now acting in a way as an ambassador of the global business network or as ICC to convey the message and also the opportunities that are rising with the hand-in-hand initiative, invite everyone to join in Rome these important events. And of course, for those of you who are interested, we are posting in the chat the link of the FAO hand-in-hand initiative, but we will be happy to support you in connect with FAO in case you need any further assistance. Then I really would like now to move to Mario Cerutti, because I'm sure that there could be already a comments from the private sector side on the opportunity of cooperation with FAO, and since Mario is also the president of the foundation of Lavazza, it will be already an opportunity for connecting the dots between public and private sector. This is already something that will happen, but at the same time I would like to ask Mario a case of success that Lavazza has already experienced during the last year in terms of cooperation between private and public sector. Over to you, Mario.
Yes, thank you very much again. Let's say I think that would be quite interesting for all of us. If I, for example, tell you one of the cases where I think really the collaboration, the cooperation between public and private is actually doing very well. And I'm referring to deforestation-free products. And of course, in particular, I'm talking about deforestation-free coffee. Everything started a few years ago from the Italian Ministry of Environment, so it's a public institution, and they involved UNDP in order to help the government of Ecuador to develop its own plans to ask for a green bond coming from the international institution. The government of Ecuador got the loan, and they used that amount of money, something in the area of $48-50 million, to create a body, which is called the Pro Amazonia, and this is basically a joint venture of 3 ministries. Now, together with that body, which in a way started from the Italian, let's say, initial spark, we got in touch with them, and we are helping them since 3 years ago to do deforestation-free products, and again, we concentrate, of course, in coffee. Our specific role is to work on the quality of the coffee, the quality of the product, is to take care of the commercialization, or at least develop the commercialization of certain lots of coffee in different markets, in Italy, of course, but also others. And we are also involved, especially at the beginning, into the definition of what we mean for deforestation-free coffee, and what are the ways to do that and to prove it to the markets. So again, I think this is a very good example, because as I said already before, I think it's very important that everybody does in a way what he can do and what he's able to do, what are the competencies, the specific competencies of everybody. And so in that particular case, we enter into the first phase of the definition, defining the general objective, the definition of this activity, and then we basically did what we know, something in relation to the product, coffee, the quality, and things like that. Even last week we sent 2 people in the country, and they stayed 2 weeks to go, and they went around in order to do training activities on the quality of the product. So again, this is, in my opinion, one way to develop this type of cooperation and cooperative activities. Specifically in relation to FAO, of course, we are in touch with some of the FAO people. More, I would say, with IFAD, but maybe they don't. I don't know. But we see them as almost 2 brothers, and so especially when we talk about agricultural activities, of course, is a reference point, and is a center of competence and of knowledge. So again, from my point of view, it's a very specialized body that it's important to have participating into activities, into projects. So it's pretty much in line on what our way of doing things is. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. And before to move, Andrea, sorry if I take some minutes, but since I know that Massimo then will leave Shape at the 6, I want to take the opportunity, if there is any question for FAO. I see there is also Sebastian. Maybe you can also open the microphone. If there is any comments or question for Massimo, maybe we can use just a few minutes to have Massimo reply, and then we will go back to Andrea for his intervention. But Sebastian, we like to open the microphone, so I see there is a question for you for FAO.
Thank you, Ercole. Well, I was thinking when I was listening Massimo about the problem of water in Argentina, and well, from FAO experience, how he think that technology could help to mitigate the problem of scarcity of water, and mainly in terms of the climate change problem, no? I'm sure that he knows very well the problem of Argentina, and also it's not only a food problem for us, it's also the external sector problem.
Yeah, so look, several things. One, Argentina has developed a weather-resistant, drought-resistant variety, which is because Argentina has a very good research and development in terms of varieties of wheat. So that's one way to use technology to increase drought-resistant varieties, controlling for the yields. The second, of course, is to use water more appropriately, no? And how we can use water more efficiently, and what type of irrigation systems apply to what type of conditions, and how we can improve on that and improve the governance of those irrigation systems. The problem normally is that we don't price water, and therefore water is used not in the correct way, not in the efficient way. We develop a publication on this specific topic. It's called the SOFA on water, which looks at all the different dimensions, learning from other countries on how this can be improved. But the third thing, in the case of Argentina, of course, you have a more complex problem, no? Which is a problem of macroeconomic policies and exchange rates, which makes more difficult to reinvest, because people are trying just to get profits and not necessarily reinvest. And that's something that needs to change, because you need to assure that returns are used to invest in infrastructure, which will facilitate and create this, and also invest in continuing to have an INTA, which is pretty good, no? And keeping it strengthening rather than let it weaken more.
Thank you, Maximo, and we will be happy to help to let this paper know here in Argentina. So please then send us, and we will share with the private sector. And also, I want to learn more about the tool you mentioned that is called, I think, Exact, that you measure to improve the productivity of the country, no?
Yeah, so the exact tool, what it does, so the maps that I show is the geospatial system that we have developed. It's called the hand-in-hand geospatial platform. So that's where you can see, like, for example, for Argentina, we're working in some of the provinces to prioritize investments, provinces that have a lot of earnings because of oil, no? And trying to reinvest that money in infrastructure and closing the gaps. So it helps enormously to target and prioritize investment. The exact tool, what it does is whatever project we do, we can measure we can measure the amount of emissions and potential effects over biodiversity, so that we understand that the intervention we're doing will have certain trade-offs. And that's what the exact tool will do. It's what the World Bank uses in all their investment projects. They use exact to measure the level of emissions and the level of effects over biodiversity.
Thank you, Maximo.
I see also there is another question for Massimo in the chat. It's Alberto Saucedo. In developing countries, you normally have very weak institution and poor business investment environments. How the hand-in-hand initiative is dealing with these conditions to attract private sectors?
Yeah, so essentially, especially in the countries that we work with, no, which are the poorest countries, but as you know, in the poorest countries, the risks are high, but the returns could be supernormal if you do it properly. So it goes in both ways, no? The issue is how FAO can contribute to minimize those risks, no, and to make it lower. The advantage that we have is that we have a very strong entry window with the governments. So the governments commit to support this initiative, and therefore they are part of the process. And that assures you that there is already a pre-commitment by the government to support and to put in place certain mechanisms and certain legislation, for example, that will protect this type of investments. But assuming that that's not enough, we're also bringing MIGA into the process, the agency from the World Bank that looks exactly at this, how to reduce the risk and protect against any potential problem in governments, in the private sector. So MIGA is also going to be part of this investment forum to try to minimize those risks and to have a way for companies to feel more comfortable controlling for this potential risk in terms of legislation. And finally, in terms of the institutionality, the technical teams of FAO are extremely involved in these countries to try to help in the process so that we can accelerate. Our goal is to use this as a means of implementation of acceleration of reduction of hunger in the next 7 years that we have left to achieve SDG 2. So we are very involved to work together with whoever company starts to work in the government to accelerate this process.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a question or just the microphone open. But there is another question for Massimo. This is more on the FAO information that was presented, also available for small investors or in some way for local actors, or is mainly focused on being investment partners. So what's the target?
No, we target all. We don't have, like last year, we brought a lot of small companies working on irrigation from Israel. We target large and small and medium firms. We don't have any discrimination in this sense, because the idea here is to match supply and demand, no? And sometimes demand could be provided by small companies, not necessarily by large, depending on the problem. And also, we are trying to attract investors from their own country. No, last year, for example, we brought a lot of coffee countries, Guatemala, Honduras, and so on, and they met with companies here in Italy, no, like Illy and so on, to try to make arrangements, because they use, like Illy, part of the blending of Illy, part of the coffee comes from these countries. So that's the beauty of the matchmaking, no? So you bring the company, you bring the private sector, you bring the government, and you bring the IFIs together. So if the governments and the ministries and the private sector are smart enough, they will facilitate this process and create this triple combination, which we believe could help enormously to accelerate private sector investment.
Thank you, Maximo. And let me highlight also that this is a new way to cooperate of UN with the private sector that we really support and encourage, because the cooperation with private sector a few years ago was mainly linked to the donors and fundraising activities. So this is a new way to shape cooperation in private sector, which is very encouraged by ICC network, because this is also a very proficient and efficient way to advertise also the investment opportunities, a business opportunity that they can come with the cooperation with the government and public sector at the global level. So this is something that it makes the real sense of how the cooperation between private and public is also shaping new modality. Now, I don't know, Maximo, if you can stay with us other 5 minutes or you need to leave, but I come back to Andrea. And sorry, Andrea, if I took the question, but we really want to take the opportunity to have Maximo on responding for the comments. But the question for you is, the framework of cooperation between public and private sector. You were already anticipating something on your first response, but project and activities the academia is shaping in order to encourage the cooperation. What is the framework where academia is already moving and assessing in order to address and links the dot between public and private sector? Let me also mention that your team and your group, and also I really would like to thank Enrico Mezzacapo, Francesca Colli, who were already part of the Food Law, Lewis Food Law LLM, that are the pleasure to coordinate Lewis University. Now they're joining your team, Agi Law, and together you are also present in this summer school on sustainable farming and food system in EU law and policy framework that will take place this summer. So this is a good product also to train people on the new perspectives of the PPP. But let me pose you the question in a more general overview.
Thank you. Well, we have many framework that promote the research and the collaboration between public and private partnership. And so far, we have both European and also national level of Italy that enhance the research in collaboration with the private and public sector. We have a few projects on that in terms of development regulatory framework to improve the adoption of technology and sustainability production in agriculture. And but also a gap to close is in terms of training, because the academia has the education goals and the training goals to transfer knowledge, but also skills. And that's an area where we are working. We are just close a project that involved four countries in Europe that was devoted to transfer the skills to boost the sustainability transition of agriculture and food sector. That was a partnership of 8 partners that include both academia, of course, but also NGO and private sector to provide training and education for farmers and operators in the field. And I think not only the academia can provide knowledge and research, but also has a role to play in training and in education, not only for students, like the university student as a tradition, but also for professional and practitioners and economic operator as well, to provide skills and competence.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andrea. So now the round of question is over, but I'm sure that we can just have 5 minutes more to open for further question. Also, in case there is any curiosity from Lavazza side. I see there was a question. Let me check the chat. For Hannah from ICC Germany. That was do you think Italy, as very food conscious country, facilitate collaboration and focus on food system? What would you suggest for countries where food is not at the center of public interest? This is a good question. I don't know if some of the speakers would like to respond, but as ICC Italy, I can move and provide a few suggestions, but I leave, before to respond to this question, the floor to Mario or Andrea, maybe from the Italian side, if you would like to remark to this question and comments on this.
Well, yes, with pleasure, of course. Yes, I think that there is a link between let's say the level of affection to food and to the daily habit we all have or we need to have in relation to the major activities. But what I think is very important is actually to understand that as some of our Italian friends, for example, of the slow food movement, they say is that the food is actually a political act. And I think this is quite correct, because in the way we buy food, we use food, or we even destroy food, we are actually making choices. We are making examples. We are giving messages. And so that's why I think that the whole food system is very, very important, starting from the way we produce our food up to the way we consume it and ultimately we dispose of. So as you, many of us have seen, the EU is in the last few months or years quite active in working on food systems. For example, think about pesticides. For example, it's of course a very important area, and to limit that is also something that we everybody has an interest. But in the same time, of course, we should do things in the proper way, because you might also be in a situation where you limit, for example, the usage of certain pesticides or other stuff, and then the results is that maybe productivity goes down. So unfortunately, they are not simple systems, but definitely I think they are very important, and definitely there is a link, and there should be a link always from these two worlds.
Thank you, Mario. Andrea? You are on mute.
Sorry, I agree with Mario Cerruti. I can add that, like, Italy is really trying to facilitate collaboration, and we saw that in the recent policy, let's say the supply chain contract, I contratti di filiera, which was a measure published by the Ministry of Agriculture in the recent year. It was a 5 edition back in the past, and also the rural district that aim to put together public institution, farmers, like private organization and academia in the ground, so at a very local basis. And also all the region in Italy has implemented in the past programming period of the Common Agricultural Policy in terms of regional rural development, also in that programming period in the strategic plans of the CAP, the measure on cooperation, which again trying to facilitate and to finance also the cooperation between private and public organization for the policy, but also for the value chain development at the local level, regional level as well.
Thank you very much for this. I don't know, Maximo, if you want to add something on this.
Oh, it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, on this, I feel like, I can add a few words from ICC side also, because the aim of the ICC project, ICC Agrifood Hubs, is also exactly to move from a national perspective to a global perspective, since, is obvious and it's very, clear that countries like Italy, but I can say also Argentina, other countries we are working with, has a strong culture, and also I can say a strong actors involved in the project. Also a very sensitive feeling on matters like food, but a few strategies that we are trying to implement with ICC Agrifood Hubs is try to raise awareness on the importance of food, and also the impact on health, environment, and culture, because there are a lot of in connection from food and various aspects of the society. Just think about economy, agriculture, social well-being. So everything is very connected. So I'm sure that also where we don't have a strong culture on food, but there is a strong culture of other topics that are very linked to the food. Then, of course, engage different stakeholders from the value chain. So if you talk about farmers, if you talk about nutritionists, scientists, policymakers, consumer, but also think about gastronomy, chefs, and restaurant. These are all in a way connected players that could be involved in the discussion. And of course, a good point that Andrea, also Mario were raising, is one link to the promotion of local and sustainable food, but also in a way to how the sustainability can be sustainable for private sector, from business. This is a good topic. We will need a different, let's say, webinar on this, but at the same time, the food education. We need to integrate food education into school. We need to work together also with academia in order to better understand the importance of healthy eating habits, food production, sustainability. Since the early age, we run, as I was mentioning, a master in food law at Lewis University. So we see that there is a growing interest in education, but maybe this is also something that we need to work together to bring private sector, public sector also more linked to the university. And of course, international cooperation, this is something that we support with ICC Agrifood Hub. Having the experience and the view at the global level, this is something that helps to shape a new way to design efficient cooperation. So this is all that we are trying to do with ICC Agrifood Hub. It's a startup, but at the same time, we truly believe this is a piece of the puzzle which is missing today in the global environment. So we really hope that with the help, with the support of all the actors, and the today webinars is an exact example of how different perspective could make the real value of the cooperation. We really hope that together we can contribute to shape a new future on the agri-food to make more sustainable. So since we are running 15 minutes out of the time, I don't know if there is another question, but I'm sure that we will have the possibility to better discuss this, maybe in Rome in October. I'm sure we all will be attending the Hand in Hand Initiative Forum together with FAO. We are now trying to better understand how we can cooperate together and enlarge our partnership. So your feedback will be much appreciated. I take the opportunity to really thank you with all the speakers, with Massimo Torero, with Mario Cerutti, and with Andrea Saba. Thank you all for your time, for your precious advice and intervention today. I'm sure that all the audience are benefit a lot from this hour discussion. And of course, all the participants, you all make the project successful, and we all really appreciate your feedback, any comments, also in private if you don't want to open the microphone, but we really appreciate your suggestion, because the project that we are designing, it's a bottom-up project. We really like to work on the suggestion inputs of the market before to design activities. So thank you very much. Thank you for all of you for joining. We will be available for questions, and thank you especially for my partner in crime, Sebastian Ferrari from Argentina, who is co-leading with me the project, and all the amazing team of ICC, Paolo and Facundo, and of course the global team that will be supporting the project. Good afternoon for those of you who are in Italy, and good morning maybe for the other part of the world, and hope to see you soon in person. Thank you very much.